This is the Final Word Daily, the West Indies Australia Daily, coming to you from the soil of Grenada National Stadium. Jeff Lemon and Bharat Sundaresan touching grass. We're on the internet and we're touching grass. It's possible to do both at the same time. Hello, Bharat. The show's brought to you by Maurice Blackburn, the number one plaintiff law firm in the nation of Australia. And you have 30 seconds to talk about a day of Test cricket.
Just 58 overs today, 3 rain interruptions. Nathan Lyon got out early. Cam Green finally made his first half century at number 3. It wasn't the best innings, but he got there, played some decent shots. Steve Smith batted like a dream, got himself to 71. Through all those rain interruptions, then was trapped in front by Justin Greaves. Travis Head and Alex Carey had a bit of a partnership, and then Shamar Joseph got rid of Travis Head after Bo Webster finally fell cheaply for a change. And Australia finished 254 runs ahead. They still have 3 wickets left. And on a pitch which is wearing, look to be on top.
I'd say that's a fair assumption. I would say they have enough now. They could declare overnight and they'd probably still win, because this surface is not easy to bat on. The bounce is getting erratic. Oh, there's another dog. Hey, dog.
Always a dog.
Good to see that they're Grenada National Stadium dogs. But, you know, not to say that West Indies couldn't pull something special out, but particularly if the last 3 put on another 50 tomorrow, it's almost inevitably going to be too much. This West Indies batting side, not the hottest going around, but it felt sort of normal. It felt like a normalish day of Test cricket, about 200 runs and 5 wickets, and then I realised it was only 2/3 of a day of Test cricket, and that's why. Because had we had a full day, there probably would have been 3 more Australian wickets, maybe 4 more West Indies wickets, and
possible.
Who knows what might have gone on. But it was just a chip away day. It's a day that doesn't need that much analysis and will not be remembered that strongly. It might have been had Steve Smith got 29 more runs. That would have been Test century number 37, and it looks almost a lock. From the point where he was about 30, he played a couple of weird shots. There were a couple of strange things where he'd suddenly have a slog, and he was doing the Steve Smith thing, I'm just playing this, and here's my little nudge, and here's my forward defence, and then he'd be like, I think I might try to swat this over mid-wicket. And he was cross-batting at balls with variable bounce, and he was playing over the top of them, and then he'd go like, ooh, and he'd look at it, and he'd point at the bowler, and he'd point at his partner, and say that this ball was doing something, was misbehaving. But once he settled down, in fact, it seemed to me like once Green got out, Smith settled better batting with Travis Head, because Head scores freely, and so Smith didn't feel like he needed to look for runs, but he was just in his groove from that point, and he got into the 70s, and he thought, well, 71 was the cut-off score. I did this whole analysis when Steve Smith was at his peak. If he reached 71, he made 100. So that there's that point, that's for 4.5 years, where if he passed 71, I think it's 22 out of 24 times he made a century from that point. And then after that, after 2019, when he came down the other side of that peak, he went past 71 over and over and over again and kept getting out in the 70s and 80s, which he never used to do. He would never lose concentration, and he would never get hit on the pad. And what happens these days is that he loses concentration and or gets hit on the pad. And that happens. Justin Greaves hits him just in line. Umpires call on impact with the review, but gets him out short of 100 and manages to contain the damage.
Yeah, and I think you spoke about the idiosyncrasies and everything that comes with it. And I've always said the more the idiosyncrasies from Steve Smith or all the animations, it's his way of acknowledging how difficult it is to bat. And this was difficult not in the way the Kensington Oval was difficult, but because the pace is gone off this pitch and so many balls are keeping low, it was more an acknowledgement of, I don't know, it's not going to be straightforward for me to score runs, so I'm going to do all of that to just get myself in the zone. And people often get swayed away by everything he does, the fidgetiness and all that, but I think through that you can also, if you really look, you can see the genius of Steve Smith, and I think that's what really came through to me today, where the way he's able to change his technique on the go, almost go, look, this is what the pitch is doing, okay, I'm going to cut this trigger out, because you need to be really in the elite class to be able to do that in the middle of a test match while you're batting out there. It's a different thing. You can do it in between test matches. So the 2 out of the first 3 balls he faced kept really low. I mean, in fact, one was so low, I think the second ball he faced,
one he just laughed at.
He just laughed at because it kind of just rolled down the ground or hit. It would have hit him between his ankle and shin. That's how low it was. And immediately you could see the Steve Smith brain calculating how he needs to go about his batting. So he said, rather than use my trademark trigger of going back and across, I'm just going to stay still
Right.
on leg stump, stay side on, so that I don't expose my pads to deliveries that might keep low again and leave me with no option. And a couple of times he still had to dig balls out when he was still using that technique. And what it did allow him to do was he was accessing areas through the offside even easier. So he was driving more from off stump and just outside off stump, rather than having to get into that position and reach at balls outside off stump. So
that's interesting that he was able to do that on the fly, and
that's just Steve Smith, really.
And
he speaks about it as well. People often ask him of what's the setup now, you've changed this, and he says, well, I change it on a whim. Not on a whim so much, but on the fly, based on what the pitch is doing and the conditions are doing. So it was a really good innings for that kind of surface, because I think more and more we'll see as this match progresses. And we saw even after he got out, Travis Head started really well against the likes of Chase and a couple of the faster bowlers. But the moment Graves came on, there was no pace. So he almost chopped on. Most of the other batters also almost chopped on. Cam Green did chop on as well.
Yeah, I think you can throw the Constance wicket into a bit of context there, in that everybody's been playing off the bottom edge. Green eventually gets out that way. We'll come to him in a second. I can have some sympathy for Constance that there's a degree of bad luck, because most players playing that shot, chop it past the stumps, get a run, maybe they get 4 runs. It's not controlled, but it's not awful. So it's a mistake that it's not the highest risk mistake that you can make. Constance paid the full price for it, others didn't.
Yeah, and I think it's just the fact that he did it in the first over. It comes with being an opener.
Sure.
You just get
I've
judged
seen a lot
different.
of openers throw the bat at a ball and edge it past the stumps and survive.
I think it's just in the sequence of his dismissals, this just gets thrown in with it.
Right.
But I think more and more we're going to see that Bo Webster, the moment he walked out, almost chopped on a couple of times before he was nicked off for 2. The difficulty levels are pretty high on this pitch, but I still don't think, you said at the top of the show that Australia could just, maybe they have enough runs, and I think they do have enough runs. They like 50-60 more runs just in case. And with Alex Carey out there, if they don't get him out in the first 15-20 minutes, he will get them those extra 50-60 runs.
Yes, especially if Cummins and Stark can whack a couple.
Exactly. And I think the thing would be, though, I still don't think Australia will steamroll through the West Indies the way they did in Kensington. Maybe they will, but it'll take a bit more graft, because there's no pace on this pitch.
Yeah.
But the Duke's ball, because it moves around as much as it does in these conditions, will be handy. And you are talking about Hazelwood, Stark and Cummins.
And I think that's why Smith went aerial a couple of times when the ball was full. So he had that one from Graves that he hit over mid-on, and it was Chase, wasn't it, with the loft for 6 over long off. So once it was pitched up, those weren't necessarily shots you'd expect to see him play on other pitches at other times, but he was willing to play them here given the difficulty. So Justin Graves, the Graves digger, he knocks over Smith and then gets Webster a couple of overs later with one that moves. They held onto a couple in the slip cordon today as well. There was Nathan Lyon early in the day. It was almost an hour of play by the time he nicked off for 8, but they held that catch. And then it was Green and Smith. So we're doing this in a bit of a muddle. So Green got out after lunch, Smith got out, and Webster just after tea, and then Head just before the close, like 12 balls before the close, when they'd already extended playing time for rain, but there are no light towers here, so bad light sent them off with 19 extra minutes played. There you go, I remember that. Cameron Green, let's talk about that. The positioning at number 3, all of the conjecture about it, all of the concern about whether he's got the technique, the poking at the ball, that sort of thing. Today it didn't look fully convincing, but it looked the most convincing that it has looked so far. Not hard when you've got out in the first over you've faced a couple of times, and should have got out in the first over you faced another time. But he seemed to have his game more in control. He was able to just wait and just absorb different periods. He was able to use that angled bat that we've talked about to sort of drop the ball away. And all of his boundaries until he raised his 50 came from square cuts or back cuts. He was able to wait for the odd one to sit up and go through the offside, which worked for him until it didn't work for him and he chopped one on just after he'd rifled a beautiful straight drive. So he goes from 48 to 52 with a perfect straight drive past the bowler, and then chops back onto his own stumps the next ball and throws the bat away. Like, super pissed off at having done the work, got the 50 and not having gone bigger, but it was at least an encouraging step.
If you're buying a stock in Cam Green at number 3, you should be happy, because at least it's trending the right way. Like every innings he's played, since starting out at number 3 at Lord's, he's looked better. I mean, Lord's, both innings, he didn't last for too long, but he just seems to be getting better and better and better. The one thing that stood out today was the way he left deliveries, because he did poke at a few, but he did leave a lot more, with a lot more conviction than he has been so far in this new position for him. So that was good to see. And you're right, and those 2 boundaries that he did get off came off the slowest of the specialist fast bowlers, Anderson Phillips. So they just sat up every time he missed his length, and just the field that was set for him, it was just bad deliveries and he put them away. But he was growing into his innings as he got to his 50, and it felt like maybe that was the moment from which point he could have just gone on to make a bigger score. But it was more relief for him, the dressing room. He didn't just raise his bat, he also raised his fist. So it tells you how much it meant to him. And not to forget, he unlike Sam Constance, he's an integral member of this team. He's been part of 2 full World Test Championship cycles. In fact, 2.5, going back to the first one, because he played for the first time in 2020.
Yeah.
So he's been at 30 Test matches, but also been on so many tours with these guys, won World Cups with these guys. So it meant a lot to him and the team, even though it was just 50. A lot of boxes were ticked, and like I said, just hang on to that share, or how many ever shares you bought into Cam Green at number 3,
right?
Because the stock might come good.
If you bought him after Bridgetown, you're going to get a good margin on that potentially. As things move towards the Australian Summer Hall of Fame in a moment. The show's brought to you by Maurice Blackburn. I will just mention superannuation insurance because that is a thing that most people don't know about because they find it very boring. I find it very boring. We're freelancers. We probably don't even have superannuation because
do.
nobody's ever nobody pays you that kind of money into a retirement fund, into a pension fund. But a lot of the time you have insurance with your super so that if you're injured, if you're incapacitated at work, you can get insurance cover. A lot of insurers don't pay that out or find ways to not pay that out or to make it difficult to get it paid out, to introduce a degree of friction into the system to slow that down. So if that's happening to you or someone you know, Maurice Blackburn are the firm that specialise in dealing with super insurance cases and making sure that workers get the insurance payouts that they're entitled to if they're not able to do their jobs for whatever reason. They operate a lot of the time on a no-win, no-fee basis. So talk to them. They're there to help out people who working people who don't necessarily have high-level access to the legal system. They're prepared to help you get over that barrier. Have a chat to them. See what you can do. The Hall of Fame after this break. It is the final word. It's the Daily. It's West Indies, Australia. It's a balmy night here in Grenada. There is half a moon above us. The lights are still on at the stadium. The sky is just receding into a form of dusk. We will, after this show, be able to go to a beach and sit on it and look at the waves and contemplate our insignificance in the face of things. Our mortality, our species' mortality. The fact that one day all of this will be gone. But right now we're here.
And about the future of Test cricket.
Yes.
The world's future depends on the future of Test cricket, as we all know.
If everything is doomed to extinction, Test cricket is also doomed to extinction. But not yet. Not yet, buddy. Call an ambulance, but not for me. Hall of Fame, what jumped out at you? What felt like a final word coded part of the day's play?
A couple of things, both involving Steve Smith. Firstly, look, this is a nice looking stadium now, but it's been around for a long time, and even the desks up in the broadcast area, those desks look like they've been around since the first time they were put there in the 1990s. This was affected badly by a hurricane back in the 90s, and they had to rebuild it, but a lot of the furniture stays the same. So I don't know about the shower situation in the Australian dressing room, but I have doubts about it, because when the umpires called tea, Steve Smith and Travis Head were out there. Steve Smith immediately started running in the direction of the dressing room, and he had almost got to the steps of the dressing room. And Travis Head, who generally likes to take his own sweet time to walk off, started running as fast as I've ever seen him run to kind of try and overtake Steve Smith to get into the dressing room. And the only reason I can think of for that is either there's only one shower in there, or maybe there's 2 showers, but there's only one with good water pressure.
There's one good shower.
That has to be the reason, because I've never seen 2 batters overtake each other.
Yeah.
It wasn't.
I've never seen Travis Head run for any reason,
and not that far. Anyway, even in the middle, he just walks most of his runs these days. So it was quite a moment. So we'll investigate. We'll find out what's up with the showers. And the other thing was classic Steve Smith. He's given out LBW. He looks at umpire Adrian Holstock and firstly says, "How out? How out?" And Adrian Holstock says, LBW, and so he was hit in front of his stump. So it was umpire's call on impact.
Yep.
But then just as the way the follow through took his pad slightly outside off stump, so he held the post for almost a minute, and that's when he asked Adrian Holstock how out, and he says LBW, and then he tells the umpire who's just given him out saying, no, but I'm outside off stump, and the umpire who'd given him says, no, you're not. Like you're in line. That's why I gave you out. The fact that he was having that conversation, I mean, it was almost like what did he expect the umpire to say?
Like the finger's already gone up. You don't talk it back down again. Who's he? Like, doesn't that fall under the dissent thing anyway, of questioning an umpire's decision?
You'd think, but because he did it so politely.
Like a really naive way.
Yeah. It was almost
played
like
100 test matches.
Well,
he knows how you get given out.
But it just, when he's in that zone, and especially when he's given out LBW, he just...
Do you think he meant like how much out? Like was it very out? Like was it just in line? Which it was.
That's what I thought the initial question was. But then when he then said, no, but I'm outside off stump.
Right. But what do you mean he
but
doesn't?
The umpire's
I want
it
you to
out.
confirm it's LBW. You've just been hit on the pad and it's been given. Did you think he'd hit it?
No, I don't think he had.
His bat's behind the pad, so it did hit the bat just after the pad.
Yeah, it did. But his only concern was the impact.
Outside the line.
Yeah, but once
you're
the
outside
umpire's...
the line now because you're moving.
Yeah.
You're on the move when you get hit.
If the umpire had given it not out and say the fielding team had reviewed it, the umpire can say, I'm not sure. But once he's given it out, he has to stick by his stance and say, well, you were in line.
But I mean, in theory, an umpire can change their decision before a player leaves the field.
Yeah.
They are allowed to do that.
Oh, yeah, very much
But they don't do that after they've been lobbied to do it by a player. That tends to not be the way, I think. Anyway, hit outside the line should be got rid of. We've talked about this on the show before. There is no reason to be given not out because the ball hit you outside the line of off stump if it's going to hit off stump. That's the point, is to try to make the ball hit off stump. It shouldn't matter where it hits your pad. If it hits your pad 2 metres that way, it's not out, but 2 metres back it is. It's the same ball on the same line. Why should it matter where it intercepts?
No, I think, but the definition of leg before wicket is you need to be caught in...
but that's from like 1890. Like the reason the outside the line of off stump law, its part in the law comes from the 1800s when batters got to decide all of the rules. And initially it had to be pitching and hitting in line with the stumps both. And that was the only way you could be LB. And if it even pitched outside off stump, you couldn't be LB. So eventually they changed the law to get rid of that part, but they kept the impact outside the line of off. And that's because ball tracking didn't exist and you had to do it by eye, and there was a greater chance of getting things wrong. But you have the ball tracking now. There's no reason why it shouldn't be.
My only argument would be then it can't be called leg before wicket because your leg is not.
The leg is before the wicket in terms of the path of the ball to the wicket.
Yeah, but it's not in front of the stumps.
That doesn't matter. That's irrelevant.
Well,
that's an arbitrary. That's like saying from one angle it has to be like this, but not the path of the ball is going to the wicket. Otherwise, it's not going to hit the stumps.
Yeah, but
so the leg is before the wicket.
But we'll agree to disagree.
You're just talking about the TV cameras being like the eye of God, and if it's not before the wicket from the umpire's point of view, then
no. But even from the umpire's point of view, like you were trained to just.
You've got to assess the path of the ball.
Yeah,
is that ball hitting the stumps?
Yeah, but also with LBW, it's about leg before wicket. So was your pad impeding with the line of the stumps, not so much with the path of the ball,
which it still is. If the ball hits you outside the line of off stump,
but you're
it's
not
going to hit the stumps.
But you're not impeding with the stumps though, like the line of the stumps.
You are stopping the ball hitting the stumps with your legs.
But your leg, but it's not. Oh, but that's we'll agree to disagree.
This is thrilling. This is going to be really interesting stuff for everybody. My Hall of Fame, we will come back to the ground here. We spoke about this in the preview, the Devon Smith Members Pavilion, and the Junior Murray / Raul Lewis stand. Now, having a bit of a deeper look at this was actually yesterday, but I forgot to mention it because Hall of Fame was too packed. They brought Raul Lewis out and had a little display for him. Now, Raul Lewis played Test cricket for West Indies. I think it was 5 tests. Was it 5 tests?
Or more one-day cricket around the wicket. He used to bowl.
And took something like 3 wickets at 110.
One of the poorer records in Test cricket. Yes.
Junior Murray at least made a Test 100 and had 100 dismissals as a wicketkeeper. So I think if you're assessing impact of career, I know there aren't a lot of options from Grenada in terms of who's going to get it, but that does seem a little odd to me. But then they had him because he's currently working for the West Indies team. So Royal Lewis is wandering around and getting announced by the ground announcer, and then effectively almost doing a lap of honour. Like, we have this great player from the legendary Royal Lewis is here. And he's walking around waving to the crowd and sort of doing this lap almost from around about a quarter of the ground. And it seemed like he was going to do a whole lap at one point. And then I realised that Frankie, the Australian team manager, was doing his lap of the ground because he always likes to just walk around the boundary. So I was thinking it would be amusing if some of the people over this side thought that Frankie was Royal Lewis as he was going by. Would be a difficult mistake to make, but who knows. And then Royal Lewis ends up just slotting some plastic cricket balls into the crowd with a bat. But there was something about the entire thing really tickled me, particularly the very loud DJ / ground announcer going, "Make some noise for West Indies team manager, Royal Lewis." Like, that's the level of celebrity G-up that you've got. You're struggling. As a hype man, you're struggling. Like, have you ever seen a crowd ask to cheer for the team manager before?
But I think you find it when you go to these smaller islands. Right? The first time I went to Dominica in 2011, when they actually inaugurated the stadium, Billy Doctorow, who had just retired as umpire, he had the pavilion. He still has the pavilion named after him. And I remember he came and invited the entire Indian team for dinner. And it was a youngish Indian team as well. Virat Kohli's first series, and Abhinav Mukund and Murali Vijay. And a lot of the younger players honestly did not know who he was because they hadn't played at a time when he was umpiring. So it was sweet that he wanted them to come home for dinner, but a lot of them did not know. And then I had to kind of tell them he's an umpire, and you see he was going to sit in his pavilion. They're like, okay. And they did go to his house, I think, for dinner, which is good.
All right, that's enough from us. Patreon.com/thefinalword is where you can support the show if you would like to. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. It is a podcast first. It's an audio medium. The video is another way of getting it if you want to do that. Find us, see what we're doing. Lots of other things coming up in the next few weeks. Jeff Lemon, Bharat Sundaresan from the Grenada National Stadium. We will have day 4 for you tomorrow. See you then.